you see it? Ah, okay.
Hello and welcome to a special on our channel. We asked you guys over the last weeks to give us some questions you had about our journey, about ourselves, about the car and so on. We are going to answer those questions today. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, let's get started.
Yeah. Let's start with the obvious question. Where are you guys from?
I'm from Mannheim in Germany. That's roughly 100 kilometers south from Frankfurt. I'm born and raised there.
And I'm from Spain. I'm from San Sebastian. It's just a city in the Basque Country, north part of Spain, at the coast. And I was raised there. And I lived there until I moved to Germany, where we lived together 3 years in Mannheim. Another question we got is if we work while traveling.
We do not work during the trip. We decided against it, and I'm quite happy we did so. It would spoil the trip quite a bit if you have to work like at least 2 or 3 days out of the week. It's even in the setup that we are right now already challenging doing the YouTube videos, which fill basically 2 days out of the week for editing, recording, and like all the handling of the files and so on. So no, we don't work, and we also don't have an income right now. We live off our savings.
Another question is, what is our professions? What did we do before this trip?
I'm mechanical engineer, she's industrial engineer. We both worked for 3 years in Germany. I worked there longer, and yeah, we worked for big companies and luckily had good salaries, which helped to finance the trip.
The next big blog is about the purpose, and the question specifically is, who gave us the idea to do such trips?
I grew up in a family that loves traveling. As I saw a couple years ago, the documentary about students of Oxford and Cambridge that drove with an old Land Rover from London to Singapore. It made like click, and I decided, yeah, I want to do something like that.
Yeah, I also traveled a lot, yeah, with my family, then independently, and also for work. I always like to learn about new cultures, experience new countries, so that was like already there. There are other overlanders that did these roads before and also were a big inspiration for us to make it real, that it's real and you can do it yourself. It's not, you are not somebody famous to do this. You just need to make it priority. And they also ask us why Land Rover Defender.
Defender was always like a dream car as a kid. I also wanted to have a T3 Synchro. They were back in the day not affordable for me. I think they still are not. So I went with the Defender, and I'm pretty happy actually with the Defender, where it brought us and how it served us over the last 8 years that we own it.
And I would like to add something. I think the community around Land Rover Defenders is just really the best. So far in a trip we have met a lot of people, but the ones that are actually stuck are the ones that actually have something to do with Land Rover Defenders. So I think that's also a plus to having a Defender. A question that we have been asked so many times is about the route that we are doing. So questions like, how long have you been traveling now? And if you have any destination, goal or time limit.
The route is difficult because like we are at the moment in Africa. We didn't plan to go to Africa. The original route was from Germany to Vladivostok, then go to either Korea or Japan and ship from there to South America. due to political reasons, like you could see in other videos. We didn't make it on this route. I think until today that route is not possible.
How long have you been traveling now?
We have been traveling since 11 months with a 2-month break in Europe. And the route so far was like coming from Germany towards Italy, Slovenia, moving down the Adria coast towards Greece. From Greece we went to Turkey, to Georgia, into Iran, and from Iran to the Arabic Peninsula, from where we then shipped to Africa, especially to Kenya. And from Kenya we drive down to South Africa, and from there the goal is to ship to South America.
Yeah, so we are not done yet. That gives us a bit of a overview of what we have done and what is to come.
Yeah, actually the plan is to travel roughly for 2 years. Depends a little bit on how much the budget is supporting this, but at the moment it's looking quite good.
Also, to that topic, they also ask us how much of the whole trip we plan in advance, so before starting, and then how much do we plan during the trip.
We have a rough idea of what we want to achieve, where we want to go, but as the past showed, it's not always possible, so you have to stay flexible. We plan roughly like 3 to 4 weeks ahead. Then a really detailed plan what we want to do is like 3 to maximum 5 days. So we are really living in the moment. We are not planned the whole route out. We don't know where we will sleep in like 4 days from now.
Yeah, exactly. And still I would recommend people to don't focus that much on planning every detail or just checking every country, every place they want to see, because maybe in the future they are in that country, they don't feel like seeing this place, and then you put that pressure on you as well. But that's another topic.
Or like in general, then you basically chase places and just tick them off your to-do list. It's not our kind of travel.
Yeah. We come to the next big block, which is something we get asked all the time, which is budget, money. How much do we spend? What is our budget in general for the trip?
Regarding the budget, we are going to make a breakout video to open our Excel sheet and show you guys what did we actually spend in which category and how we are living off our budget. Our budget is actually 1,500 euros for the both of us per month. That's compared to other travelers that do similar routes at tighter budget, but for us so far it's working great. If we exclude the shipping that was not planned from Jordan to Kenya, then we are actually within our budget. So yeah, we can say it works for us. For others it might be a little too tight.
Related to that, they also ask us, how does it work financially when traveling that long or long term? How do we do it?
We don't have any income right now. We live off the savings that we both got over the last 7 or 8 years. We had a privilege to have the financial freedom with our jobs to put every month something aside that in the end adds up and makes it possible to do a trip like that.
And a tight budget for sure helps. Like if you want to go longer, look at what you spend every month, because that can have a huge impact in the future, how many months you can travel around the world.
Yeah, in general, what helps also to prepare a trip like that you always have an eye on not living over your income. We had a comfortable but subtle lifestyle back in Germany, so we were able to save up money.
Another big question is, how much did the Landy cost, the car, and also the conversion?
8 years ago I bought one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, Defender in my region. It cost me back in the day 12,000 euros. Then one of the biggest cost factors was the PopTop conversion, which came in at roughly 7,000 euros. The interior was built by ourselves, so there's a lot of work in, and I would roughly guess like 3,500 euros, including the fridge, and I would add another 1,000 euros for the electrical system, solar system, and so on.
But I want to add one thing, which is that you don't need to do all this conversion to travel around the world. We didn't have this conversion for the longest time in the car, so the PopTop was not there in the beginning, and still we travel a lot of countries with the standard station wagon. So I think you can do it.
Yeah.
It will not be that comfortable for sure, but it's completely feasible.
But yeah, don't let gear or a
Yeah.
lack of gear stop you. It's like on a trip like that where we are right now, it is nice to have a little bit more comfort,
Yeah.
but it's definitely also possible with a car that's less equipped. It's just you have to figure out what's important for you, and don't let the trip depend on having a winch or not having a winch, because in the end you will make it work if you have it or if you don't have it.
Yeah. Related to that as well is the cost of the car during the trip. So a lot of people ask us because they think the Defender is not reliable at all and is going to break down all the time and cost us a lot of money. So you can answer that.
We are actually quite lucky with the Defender. It is really, really reliable. We had only a couple of smaller issues with it. Achieving that also, a big contributor is that we had professional eyes looking at the car before we set off. We addressed a lot of failures that would have caught up with us if within the first 2,000-3,000 kilometers before we even set off. So we, for example, did clutch, flywheel, several bushings, wheel bearings, adding everything up, including the maintenance, the oil changes, and a couple of small failures that we had.
Yeah.
We come to a cost of 550 euros.
Yeah.
Roughly for
a
everything.
year, for 1 year.
For everything, yeah, for 1 year and for 37,000 kilometers in rough terrain.
Yeah.
Definitely, like especially here in Africa, the roads are bad, and we take the car places.
I think it's pretty good statistics. But they also ask us, okay, you do most of the things yourself, so you can save money on the maintenance, because Kai didn't mention, but he's doing a lot of maintenance of the car during this trip. And then they ask us, yeah, but how many hours were you under the car comparing to driving? To have an idea of what does it mean to own a Defender and to maintain a Defender in such a trip.
Yeah, we added that up, and altogether we came to roughly 25 hours of repairs and maintenance for everything that we did.
Oil change as well.
Yeah, including the oil changes, and so everything that we did in the last year, and compare that to 750 hours of driving, then that makes 3% of the time driving is spent to do maintenance and repairs.
Which is very good. So
yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
Next block, it's a bit different, but it's very important as well. The question is, what would you rather have known in advance?
I rather would have known that the route that we originally planned is not possible in the end. So we could have been more in control where we end up going, because I probably would have chosen another route if I would have known what I know right now.
For me, something I didn't know before this trip is that it's very important, or at least for us, it's very important to have a break in the trip. So those 2 months we were back at home in Spain during the summer season, it was just really nice to be with family and friends. It gave us a lot of energy to continue such a trip. So I didn't have an idea that that would be a thing, but I would recommend other people to maybe do a break inside the trip. Rory asked us, what is the one thing you would change on the Bluelandy on you individually and also as a couple. So let's start with the Bluelandy. What would you say we could change or should have changed? Or
I would like to have the bench in the back a little bit more comfortable, so like it's 90 degrees, tilted a little bit, so you have an inclinated seat to make it a bit more comfortable to sit there, something more like a sofa in the back. Because for me it's quite challenging to sit there for longer times, and when we edit or so,
yeah.
we sit there for hours, so it would be nice to have it a bit more comfortable.
Yeah. Another thing we discussed is as well the awning. We have a 270 degree awning. Actually, we have it on, but normally during this trip we don't have it on. So we move that much or so fast that sometimes it's just not worth it, the work to put it out and then in. So for such a trip, we would maybe choose a smaller awning. But we love the awning, so in a place where you can stay for a week or longer, it's just amazing.
And another thing I would probably do different is I would remove the front bash plate, because it's just increasing the transmission temperature, because there's not so much air moving underneath the car hitting the transmission. So the car inside where the batteries are, where the control unit are, and so it gets really, really hot. To have that a little bit better under control, I would remove the front bash plate. Anyways, it looks brand new, it doesn't have a single scratch, so why do we have it on? I mean, it looks good, but that's it.
What about individually?
For planning a trip in the future, I definitely will focus it on building the trip around something I love a lot other than traveling. So build a trip around surfing, build a trip around hiking, build a trip around mountain biking, or whatever you love. Because for me, it's like only like moving from place to place to place gets tiring after some time. Yeah, definitely put in places that you especially target to do an activity, to do something you love, and it will freshen up the trip, and you also get some exercise and so on. So that's definitely something I would change, or I will change in the future.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the things I should work on is to lower my expectations on what I'm able to see in each country. So I think in the past I put a lot of pressure on trying to see everything in the country, or just to pack everything while we are there. And I think after 1 year it's really not the way of seeing such a trip, and we should try to enjoy the few things or the things that we see in the country and not focus about ticking all the boxes. Still working on that, but I think it's getting better.
As a couple, I think it would be nice to have the opportunity to also split up for some days and focus on your interests. It's pretty difficult to achieve that when you have the setup with the car, that you live out of the car, everything is in the car. So just removing some clothes and a toothbrush is not really doing the job. You need to have then accommodation, you need to have transport, so that makes it really difficult. We are still trying to work on that to see if it's possible, but that's something for me that I would like to change in the future.
Yeah, and I guess one recommendation would be to talk about those interests before starting the trip, and maybe plan that a bit in advance. That's maybe the only thing I would say could help on planning. Just really putting the time for the interest of the other person, so those are met. Now we come to specific questions about Africa. Daniels asked us, how does it feel to travel in Africa compared to the rest, what we have seen so far?
For me, Africa is completely different to everything we have seen before, especially like the Middle East, which was like wide open land, not a lot of people. So it made it really easy to wild camp. It's also one of the safest countries in the world, so it made it really enjoyable, really easy. That's a little bit different in Africa. There's a lot of private land. We struggle a bit to find wild camping, what we love to do here in Africa. Just to put it in perspective, from Germany to Iran, we stayed in 2 or 3 accommodations.
Yeah.
And in Africa, we did that in the first country, in Kenya already.
Yeah, in the first days. Yeah.
Yeah, so that puts things a little bit in perspective.
But Africa is one of the most impressive landscapes we have seen, in the sense that everything is just an explosion of green. So that's something we haven't seen in other countries that extreme. The number of insects we see here, the number of animals we see here, it's just not comparable to anything that we have seen so far. So in that case, yeah, I mean, it is challenging. Another thing you didn't mention is to talk to locals and get interacting with locals, especially here in East Africa, is very, very challenging. Something we love to do, and we still are working on finding ways to get to that. But it's important to say we have been only in East Africa so far, so we cannot talk about the whole Africa. Maybe when we come to Southern Africa countries, or opinions will change, especially regarding wilderness, openness, and so on.
For me, one challenge in Africa is there's a lot of people, and I love to go to places where there's a little bit the opposite, where there's a lot of wilderness and no one around for miles and miles and miles. And that's definitely more difficult than I thought to find in Africa. If you want to see wilderness in Africa, if you want to see wild animals in Africa, you really have to target that.
Yeah.
It's not like the documentaries and BBC show you that like Africa is wild and there's a lion behind every tree. It's not like that.
No. Related to that, they also ask us, do you need 4x4 if you want to come to Africa? Yeah.
I would say the trip in general so far would have been possible without 4x4. You definitely need high clearance, you definitely need good tires, but most of it was doable on a two-wheel drive. Most locals drive two-wheel drives and they also get places. It's sometimes a little bit difficult or even not possible to get to the nicest camp spot with a two-wheel drive. You will need to park maybe like a kilometer further down the hill or so, but it's definitely possible without four-wheel drive. But one big factor that I like having a four-wheel drive, having a Defender, having a utility car is the extra margin of safety that you have. We hit potholes here all the time. We hit them at speed because they're just like, you cannot avoid all of them all the time. And hitting a pothole with 80 in a Defender is going to shake up everything, but it's not going to break something. And in a van, that might break something or misalign something, and then you have to deal with it. So I love that factor of having a big, chunky 4x4. But other than that, if you're careful...
and plan the route, you can actually go with a two-wheel drive.
Yeah, totally possible.
We come to the last questions, and these are special questions, more like random questions I prepared. First question for you, Kai. Most difficult off-road, where and when?
I would definitely say one of the last days was quite challenging, going up the mountain in forest reserves and washed out roads. Then sand is also always a problem for us because we are so heavy. So Saudi is definitely up there, and Georgia with snow and mud was also a bit scary. So I'm not really sure which one was the most challenging, but it's between those three for me.
Yeah, those were pretty challenging, but for me, for what I saw and so on, I would say the other day where we were in a very mud road after having rained for the last 3 days. And we had one ditch on one side, one ditch on the other side, going uphill. That was, I think, pretty difficult. I mean, if the locals already couldn't go with their motorbikes, bikes, even walking was not possible, that was pretty difficult. You really need to know your car, you really need to know your skills, and you need to know for sure how to recover the car if something goes wrong there. So I think that was pretty difficult. Most scary day.
Most scary day, I would say it's probably like the day where we camped in Karamoja in the bush, and in the morning 4 or 5 guys with like big machetes stand in front of us and tell us, yeah, give us what's in your pocket. That was definitely a tense situation. Yeah, I struggle a little bit here with the assessment of how safe it is and whom to trust and whom not to trust. In the end, it got more relaxed as we gave them some fruits because we didn't want to give, or we in general don't want to hand out money. But yeah, that was definitely a tense situation.
Yeah, I would say that was tense. I didn't have, I was actually not scared there. I think there was tension, but still you could see that they came in peace. So, of course, if you come in peace when you have those machetes in your hand, it doesn't help. But I was not scared there, but I was actually scared in this dirt truck that I just mentioned, because in the morning we knew that we had to do it up, and I was scared of falling into one of those ditch and not being able to recover the car or breaking something from the car in the middle of nowhere. So, best camp spot for you.
That's not so easy. Like Turkey was really nice, but I would probably pick one in Georgia, in Ushkuli, where we camped in the mountains. Also, like Iran had super nice places, Saudi had super nice places, but I struggle a bit when it gets too hot. So those countries, at least in the summertime when we were there, are out for me. And Georgia was nice, cold, and yeah, we had a great camping spot and the opportunity to go hiking, to explore the surroundings. So you also have the activity that makes it, for me, probably one of the best camp spots in this trip.
For me, I asked for the best camp spot, but I cannot choose one. So I have it pretty up in the list, Cappadocia in Turkey. I really like the one in Ushkuli as well, but I have to choose also the Lut Desert in Iran, the Edge of the World in Saudi Arabia. That's an epic camp spot. And one of the last ones, which was sleeping just not very far from a family of hippos and seeing the hippos move around the car. That was insane to see, and for me it's really up in the list. Yeah. The last question: best moment or most memorable moment for you in the trip?
I really don't know. It's like in such a trip you have so much impressions coming at you that I find it hard to remember the first days, like when we were in Croatia, and so it was beautiful days in the spring, but it feels like it was a vacation 3 years ago, even if it's like 9 or 10 months ago. So it's really difficult in the retrospective to pick a point, because like you have the ones from the last maybe 4 weeks in your memory, but when you go through the pictures you see, oh, what, that one was great. So I don't know what to pick.
Yeah, I agree with you in that, like the impressions and the amazing moments we get on the trip is just constantly. So,
I mean, meeting people
yeah,
is always like a great extra. So like spending time with Rory and FJ's, being in Dubai was great, and like
in Shiraz that was
Shiraz
amazing.
was amazing to have pizzas there.
Yeah, with
Fresh made,
everybody.
homemade pizzas.
That was amazing.
So
dinner,
it's like that's definitely great, but I'm unable to pick like this moment was the greatest.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's very difficult to be able to choose one exact moment. So yeah, let's see what's also to come, and in the next months of traveling, hopefully we have more memorable moments to remember in the future.
And to share.
And to share, of course. Yeah. If you want to know more about all this trip, of course, just check our episodes. That's where we share all day-to-day experiences. If you have more questions that we also forgot to answer or additional questions, just write it in the comments. We will be super happy to answer them. And if you find that you really need more information regarding a specific topic, we could always make a specific video about it. So
just let us know.
yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, see you next week.
Yeah, see you around.